Notice the terraces. Terrace farming at the time of Jesus was a very hard labor, and it was a very time-consuming process to create the terraces because people used very primitive tools, chisels, iron chisels and hammers. So they had to start from cutting off the bedrock to make, well, these kind of gigantic steps. And then most of the stones people used for building up the walls of the terraces. And after the walls were built, they had to bring up the soil from the bottom of the hill, one donkey load at a time, to fill the space between the mountain and the retaining wall. And as you remember, they put the soil by layers, first chalk and then fertile soil. So scholars say that it took a family 1 year to create only 1 dunam of land. It's a strip of land 25 by 10 meters, or a quarter of an acre. So of course, no one bought the land before inspecting it, because the value of the land was determined how close it was to production. Would be the land like these finished terraces, or just a bedrock that might require many generations to produce. Well, in one of his parables, Jesus tells about a person who invited many guests for his banquet or feast, but as if those people agreed among themselves, they started to make excuses why they could not come. And one of them said, "Excuse me, sir, I cannot come for a banquet because I bought a piece of land and now I must go and inspect it." Did you get the point? Mm-hmm. So most of Jesus' listeners were very simple people who were familiar with agriculture, and they understood that it wasn't an excuse, but it was an insult.
This is the wine press.
Now this is the original from the time of Jesus. So it was in use when Jesus grew up here in Nazareth. So how did people use this press? They grew grapevines on the terraces, and at the end of summer they brought clusters of grapes from the terraces in big baskets, and then they dumped the grapes, and they pressed grapes with their bare feet. And grape juice flowed through this channel to the collecting vat, and shortly after the grape juice was collected, people fermented the juice into wine. The inner walls of the collecting vat were plastered because the bedrock that I'm standing on is the limestone, and limestone is a soft stone, so they had to prevent the grape juice from penetrating into the rock. And they also covered the vat a fine net, in order to prevent different insects from getting to the grape juice, because they were attracted with the sweetness and the aroma of the grape juice. And from time to time people had to lift up the net to strain the net and to remove all the bugs. And some scholars say that this is what Jesus referred to, is that those people swallow the camel but they strain the bug. By the way, do you know why people had to remove their sandals every time while pressing grapes?
So they wouldn't crush the pits.
What happened if you crushed the pits?
It would make the wine bitter.
Isaiah 63:3-6 and Revelation 14:19 both use this imagery of trampling on the grapes in the winepress to speak of God trampling on the heathen nations when he's destroying them in his wrath.